When I was in high school, when I was a senior in high school, and it came time to start applying to, different colleges and start to think about, I guess, what my next step was, which it doesn't necessarily have to be college, but that's a topic for an entirely different video. And so I was thinking about different schools that I wanted to apply to. And I had always been a really great student academically. I always pushed myself and excelled academically. I was very conscientious. And, I graduated at the top of my class. And so I was able to look, or at least entertain the idea of attending really good colleges. And I remember sort of like going through the different colleges based on, the things that I was interested in, that I wanted to study as I kind of progressed in school. And I had a handful of different colleges. None of them were any farther than probably 50 miles away from my parents' house. They were all within commuting distance. And I remember thinking, because I have an older sibling also, and it was similar, I think, when they went through that process, the idea of dorming or living away at school, kind of going away and moving away from home, even if it was a really prestigious school that focused on what it is that I wanted to study, and, that it might be a really great experience, like it might be exactly what I need to do, it was never really an option. And I think it was another one of those situations where we had encountered, other people making that decision, whether it was extended family or, friends who made the decision to move away from home to go to school and to live away at school. And every single time that scenario was brought up or talked about, it was painted in such a negative light by my narcissistic parent. Everything from how much it costs to how small the dorm rooms are to, how anyone could ever even imagine moving away from home, especially if they've got a younger sibling involved, and just removing themselves from the family. Every single negative, I guess, excuse sort of in the book would be used by my narcissistic parent to sort of shape my opinion of that experience or of that decision. So when the time came for me to make a decision about where I wanted to go to school, it was never really even on the table, because I remember feeling like I couldn't really suggest it, again, because I knew what their opinion was, and I didn't want to be, I was sort of made to feel like a bad person for even entertaining the thought of leaving my family and going away to school, even though it's a completely normal decision that thousands of kids make every single year. And there's nothing wrong with, at that time in your life, 18, 19 years old, kind of moving away to a new place and I guess starting fresh and standing on your own 2 feet. You're entering adulthood. And I think putting yourself in that position, it allows for a lot of growth and independence, which again is one of those things that I think really scares a narcissist, especially a narcissistic parent who's maybe used to having a child always around and always available. And so I felt like that really limited my options in terms of where I wanted to go to school. And, I even remember having a handful of schools that I wanted to apply to that it would have been difficult to commute to, but I still could have. And that was always the option. It was never like, oh, well, that's kind of a far drive. Maybe you should consider living on campus. It was always, let's inconvenience you as much as possible so that you're home as frequently as you possibly can be and you're available to me. And I was completely naive to this in the moment, but I remember listing off some of the different schools that I wanted to apply to. And there was one school that was very close to home that I think was probably the best option for my parent in terms of how close it was, how much it cost. And I remember bringing up applying to these other schools or getting ready to submit my applications. And they said something along the lines of, well, what's the point? You already know that you're going here. And I hadn't made that decision. And it wasn't a decision that I even made entirely on my own. When I did ultimately make the decision to go to that school, it was so heavily influenced by my parents' opinion. And it took me a really long time, years after I moved out and kind of cut off contact with them, to realize how many decisions of mine that I had made throughout my life I made based on how they felt and how I thought they would react, sort of what they wanted, instead of ever turning that same question inward and asking myself, okay, what's right for me? What do I want to do? Because that was always secondary. That never sort of matched the level of importance of what was important to my narcissistic parent. they always came first. And it's a crazy thing to realize and to speak about, but for so long, I think so many of us are viewed, and in turn sort of view ourselves as an extension of our parent, because we're sort of conditioned over time to believe that the right thing for us to do is to always take into consideration what our parent wants, and to prioritize their wants and needs over our own. And so we feel like we're doing the right thing. And yet, you really should be making these big life decisions based on what you want, what you feel comfortable with, and what you think is right for you. And yet, a narcissistic parent will not encourage that kind of thought process or behavior or decision making, because it doesn't benefit them. And they are only happy for you when you do something that they want or something that will benefit them at the end of the day. Thanks so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video and want to see more, be sure to give it a like and subscribe to my channel. You know, I am not a professional. I don't claim to be one, but a therapist once told me that I am an expert in my own experience. And I want to speak about these topics candidly so that anyone who has experienced or is currently experiencing something like it knows a little bit more about what to expect, how to respond, and that you're not alone.